Hi, I'm Jim, W6LG for Ham Radio Basics. Welcome to my radio room here on Wolf Mountain. I'd like to talk about how you set up your first ham radio station, and I'm going to point that towards HF, not so much about VHF, UHF. So for an HF station, there's a couple things you need. You need the place that you're going to operate from to be basically yours. So your little place, whether it be a walled off part of the garage, a closet, a place in the family room, a place in the basement, the den, wherever you put it, it needs to be your space. And it needs to be pretty much exclusively your space. A good chair from Staples, one like this, I think I paid $80 for. That's fine. One with arms that you can put your elbows on is probably a good idea. The desktop is critically important. It needs to be a bit on the large side so you have room to expand. The desk back here is about 3 feet deep and about 6 feet wide. And that gives me lots of room to put equipment out, and it also has, as you can see, a shelf. So a desk is really important. You can construct your own desk. It can be made out of a lot of different things. It could be a piece of plywood. It could be as fancy as Larry the radio guy's desk, and I'm going to bring up a picture in a minute because his desk is really nicely laid out, and it has a lot of things that I like a lot. And in fact, I'll circle those things in the picture when I get there. So you need a dedicated space, you need a decent chair. It needs to be a conditioned space, especially if you're going to buy an expensive transceiver. You don't want to put it in a wet basement. You really want to keep it in a nice climatized location. With respect to the things that would be on the desk, probably the first thing would be a power supply, and I highly recommend a power supply with a transformer in it. The reason for that is switching supplies, which don't have a transformer, switch and make a lot of noise, and they can cover up an entire ham band, or they can put out signals up and down the band. So bite the bullet, maybe buy a used one, but get a power supply with a transformer in it. It needs to weigh, it needs to be heavy. Next box over for most guys is going to be the transceiver, and again, I'm talking about HF. I prefer for a base station not a mobile transceiver, so I want something that's bigger knob, bigger display, slightly bigger controls. The K3 is about as small as I want to get. The ICOM 7300 is fairly small but has great ergonomics, and they grow from there. As far as the transceiver that you pick, I don't know what to recommend. If you buy an older transceiver, it may not be repairable. It may not be fixable should something go wrong. If you buy a relatively new transceiver or you buy a new one, you might be able to get a warranty or have it to be able to be repaired should something go wrong. When I first got on the air, the guy that was helping me, and this is 1963, said, "Get good stuff, because I don't want you to be spending your time fixing it, trying to get it to work." And I think that advice is still pretty good 53 years later. Get stuff that works so you can get it on the air. If you want some projects and you want to rehab some vintage equipment, great. Put it off to the side and do that, but don't make that your main transceiver. Next box over might be an SWR meter, watt meter combination. Recommend you place that right above the transceiver so that when you're looking at the transceiver, you're sort of seeing in your periphery, the peripheral vision, the watt meter. You want to know when you're transmitting that it's transmitting. And sometimes things go wrong, and the first indication is your output goes down. So SWR meter, watt meter doesn't need to be fancy, but it needs to indicate something. So whatever works with your particular equipment. The next box over for some folks, and a fairly small number, is probably going to be a linear amplifier, and that should be next to the transceiver, and you want to have it so that you can look at the meters when you're transmitting. You want to make sure that everything is working as it should. So the layout would be Power supply, transceiver, linear amplifier, up on top of the transceiver, a watt meter. Microphone. I watched a guy's video today and he recommended that you use the microphone that comes in the box if you buy a new transceiver. I highly recommend that you don't. They're generally pretty lousy. They're cheaply constructed. They're tinny, plasticky sounding. Every time you hit the switch it makes a noise and the guy you're talking to is going to hear it each time you switch. Buy a used microphone. Shure 444, Static 10DA, Heil HC5. Any of the many microphones that have the HC5 cartridge in it. There's a whole bunch of mics that run $50, $60, $70 that are just great. Don't buy a $500 microphone. Don't buy a $400 microphone. You don't need it. Other devices that you're probably going to have at your station and you want to have within arm's reach would be an antenna switch, because you're probably at some point going to have more than one antenna and you want to switch. In my case, some of the antenna switches are screwed to the bottom of the desk, so I reach under and flip that switch. I didn't want the cables to come across, and so I can reach those switches. I know which position is which. And one of the ways I switch amplifiers is that I have two switches, and I flip those two switches to pick amplifier number 1 or number 2. Other things that you probably have at your station that are really handy would be either a laptop or a computer. In my situation, unfortunately, the monitor is up pretty high. I have some problems with my neck, and it's not a good thing, so I'm looking for ways around that, and I'm thinking maybe a larger tablet perhaps is the way I'm going to go. But you need a logging program. So right off the bat, go with some kind of logging program. The one that I use is Log4OM, L-O-G, the number 4OM. It's great. It does everything. It's pretty easy to install. It'll talk to most transceivers, and it'll keep the frequency that you're on. If you want to post something to the DX cluster, push a button and it does it. It's a great program, and it's free. So let's go look at Larry's station. Larry, the ham radio guy, he has a lot of fun. His station is really neat, and before you see the picture, keep in mind he didn't spend a lot of money. A friend of his built it. Larry had worked for some police departments, fire departments, dispatch centers, and knew how they laid out his equipment. They laid out their equipment, and he sort of used that idea in laying out his ham radio station, and it's really nice. So let's go look at that picture, and on the other side we'll talk for a few minutes. But let's look at that first. Be right back. WD0AKX at his radio console, and as you can see, he's got lots of room on the desk in front of the equipment. There's a map. Could be a place to write notes. Could be lots of things. So and that's real handy. So you want a space. Also, it's a place to rest your arm. So room in front of the equipment is a good idea. Off to the left, you can see he's got a paddle and a straight key. All he has to do is slide those over. There's plenty of room to use them on the desktop, to comfortably use them. Also, note probably the most important thing here is that his hand really is laying on the table, but it is able to reach the VFO knob. Also, that the microphone is about an inch from his lips, maybe even less than that. It's a great way to do it. You don't have room echo. Next thing is 2 speakers, one on each side, left and right. They both face Larry, and it's a great way to operate. Gives a little more depth in the signal, in the audio. There's a watt meter and a clock in the middle that Larry can look at when he's transmitting. Also, there's places for peripherals. This appears to be a coax switch. It's on a shelf. And note that everything is within arm's length. It doesn't have to reach over anything to get to it. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing Larry's station. It's really very nice. And a couple of things that I want to reinforce. Number one, if you noticed, his lips were about that far from the microphone, and that's what you need to do. Run the mic gain down, close talk the microphone, so you don't have room echo. And the guys you're talking to will appreciate that. The other thing is, have the VFO knob really as low as you can get it. In my case, the K3s, all I have to do is lift my wrist a bit, and I'm on the VFO. My arm is still on the table, and that's because I want to be able to tune the band, up and down the band, and not be reaching for the knob. That makes no sense at all. So if you put the transceiver up on a shelf and you're doing this, if you're operating just nets where you're checking into a net, I guess that's okay. But if you're going to be looking for DX, tuning the band for half an hour, you can't hold your arm up, well, at least I can't, for a long period of time. Also on Larry's desk, pretty much everything was in arm's length. The other thing too is the speakers were up on top, pointed towards his head. So probably both speakers play at the same time. It's a good effect. They're not expensive. I'm using Drake speakers. I think they're on eBay for about 80 bucks. I changed out the speakers, put some speaker padding material in the back, and they sound great, and there's plenty of volume. So having the speakers up high, pointed at your head, is a good thing. Again, if you're DXing and you're tuning the band, you want to be able to listen. A good set of headphones is also really, really handy. So put that into your list of things. If you noticed, well, I didn't mention it in the video, but Larry's using a Heil microphone. My guess is it's an HC4 or an HC5. It's just a terrific microphone. It's got great audio quality. They probably made 1 million of them. So they're readily available, used, and they sound great. If you're going to use something like this, or a Shure 44, which is in my cabinet, you're going to be doing this. You're going to be picking it up and close talking the mic. Don't put it on the desk and talk a foot away from it. It's going to sound hollow, going to have room echo. Not a good thing. Anyway, that covers the basic ham radio station layout. Really pretty simple, but there's some things that you want to keep in mind. Close talk the microphone, a couple of speakers, transformer type power supply. Keep the transceiver low so you can grab the knob. Have some space in front of the transceiver for notes, like a notepad, or in Larry's case he had a map. That's a nice thing to have. Computer running, be it a laptop or, which is probably something I'm going to go to, so that you can use that for a logging program. Also, you can follow the DX cluster and see what other guys are hearing. The other thing that I'm doing here is that monitor is connected to an SDR receiver, which is connected to the IF of the K3, which gives me a pan adapter, and that's a cool thing to have. Not expensive. I think altogether it cost 80 bucks, something like that, 70, 80 bucks. Anyway, I'd like to hear your comments. Ham radio is a licensed radio service. It has some hobby aspects. One of those is laying out your station. This stuff behind me is 53 years of accumulation, so I have a few more things than I need, because some of them I just finally wanted them and got them. But doesn't have to look like this. It can be relatively modest and still work the world, and we'll get into other parts of that in subsequent videos, which include antennas, feed lines. What does it take? And as we're heading into the bottom of the sunspot cycle, it becomes really important. We've got about 4 years. When I'm recording this, it's 2016. The bottom is, near as I can tell, my guess, 2020. All right. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed it. Post a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you the next time. I'm Jim, W6LG, for Ham Radio Basics. Thanks for watching. See ya.